The story begins with Sun Ho, a middle school student who falls off the school roof one night. It seems like an unthinkable act, but the truth is unclear. His shoes are found on the rooftop, even though he was wearing them when he fell. Earlier that evening, Sun Ho's mother, In-ha, is on her way home with her husband, Moo-jin. In-ha runs a bakery with her sister, Jun-ha, while Moo-jin is a teacher. In-ha gets worried when she learns that Sun Ho hasn't returned from his academy yet. Moo-jin tries to reassure her, excited about the lunar eclipse happening later that night. He nearly crashes the car in his excitement. As it gets later and Sun Ho still isn't home, In-ha becomes more anxious. She calls Suk-hwee, the mother of Sun Ho's friend, Young Cheol, who is busy running her grocery store. Young Cheol admits he doesn't know where Sun Ho is. Soon after, In-ha receives a call from the hospital. She rushes there to find Sun Ho in critical condition. The doctors quickly take him to the operating room to try and save his life. In-ha is devastated and breaks down in tears. Meanwhile, Jun-ha goes to Sun Ho's house to comfort his sister, Su-ho. Su-ho is overwhelmed with grief. Jun-ha reassures her and promises to take her to the hospital soon. At the hospital, a detective named Park Sung-man meets Sun Ho's parents. He suggests that Sun Ho might have tried to commit the unthinkable. In-ha, angrily, denies it. Moo-jin adds that Sun Ho showed no signs of stress earlier that day. In fact, he had promised to watch the lunar eclipse with his dad before going to school. Moo-jin then suggests there might be another explanation. The detective shares that Sun Ho's shoes were found at the edge of the school roof. Unfortunately, they couldn't retrieve any footage of Sun Ho at the school that night because the security cameras were malfunctioning. However, the detective assures them that the police will explore all possibilities. The thought that Sun Ho might have attempted this act shocks In-ha even more, and she breaks down in tears again. Meanwhile, the doctors continue to operate on Sun Ho, who remains in critical condition. As his parents wait outside, In-ha struggles to believe this isn't just a nightmare. Her grief is overwhelming, and she anxiously questions whether her son will survive. Through her tears, she prays to God to give her son another chance at life. After the operation, the doctor informs the family that Sun Ho is still alive, but his breathing and vital signs are unstable. This means he could fall into a coma or even become brain dead. Sun Ho's parents quickly go into the ICU to see him. The sight of Sun Ho covered in bandages breaks In-ha's heart, and she begins crying again. Later, Young-chol sneaks out of his room to smoke. Meanwhile, his mother, Suk-hwee, notices his phone ringing and decides to check it. To her horror, she discovers a video of Young-chol and some other boys bullying Sun Ho. When Young-chol returns, Suk-hwee confronts him, scolding him for mistreating Sun Ho and fearing that it may have driven him to attempt the act. Young-chol defends himself, saying they were just playing a game, but his mother doesn't believe him. The next morning, Jun-seok, Sun Ho's best friend, seems worried too. His mother, Yoon-ju, is also on edge while working. She is suddenly startled by the unexpected arrival of her husband, Jin-pyo, who is revealed to be a wealthy man. Jin-pyo is also the director of a private foundation that runs the school where Sun Ho and his friends study. Yoon-ju overhears her husband speaking with the school principal. He instructs them to handle the situation surrounding Sun Ho's possible self-harm, act discreetly, and not to focus too much on it. Over breakfast, Jin-pyo informs Jun-seok that detectives will soon come to question him, advising him not to say anything unnecessary that could cause problems. Yoon-ju then asks about Sun Ho's condition. Jin-pyo responds with a taunt, suggesting she asked Sun Ho's mother directly since she used to be In-ha's classmate. Next, In-ha recalls that Sun Ho visited her before going to the academy on the day of the incident. He seemed reluctant to go, but she didn't pay much attention to it at the time. Now she regrets not being more attentive to her son. At school, Vice Principal Mr. Bae scolds Mr. Lee, Sun Ho's homeroom teacher, for not paying enough attention to his class. He instructs Mr. Lee to keep a close eye on Jun-seok, as Eun-ju specifically requested it. Mr. Bae also orders the temporary closure of class chat rooms to help students focus on their studies. Meanwhile, Young-cheol and his friends, Gi-chan and Sung-jae, meet at school, worried that the video of them bullying Sun Ho might cause trouble. They decide to delete it, but are concerned since a copy of the video might still be on Sun Ho's phone. In class, Mr. Lee advises the students to be honest when questioned by the detective. He also mentions that Sun Ho's phone is missing and asks the students to report it if found. However, he is interrupted by another teacher, Mr. Kang-hoon, who is in charge of the violence committee. This forces Mr. Lee to leave class early to meet Sun Ho's parents. A young girl named Dong-hwee leaves class to meet with Mr. Lee. She asks about Sun Ho and seems to know something about him, but decides to stay quiet. As she walks back, she pulls out an energy bar from her pocket, remembering Sunho. After this, Sunho's parents meet with the principal, Mr. Myong, along with Mr. Bae and Mr. Lee. The principal offers his condolences to the parents for what happened to Sunho. In-ha insists that Sunho would never consider this type of act, and if he did, it must be related to something at school. Mr. Bae disagrees and starts to argue, but Moo-jin steps in. He explains that they just want to know the truth about what happened to Sunho, as it will give them some peace. He asks for the full cooperation of the school administration, and Mr. Myung promises his full support. Before they leave, Mr. Bae mentions that a security officer, Mr. Shin, found Sunho on the night of the incident. Mr. Shin, who used to be a detective, called for help immediately, which saves Sunho's life. Meanwhile, Suho visits the site of the incident. She meets Mr. Shin there and thanks him for saving Sunho. However, she adds that Sunho might have been in a better condition if he had been found earlier. Later, Suk-hwae visits In-ha, intending to reveal the truth about the bullying video. But she receives a text from Young Cheol, asking her to keep his secret since Sunho's phone is lost. Suk-hwae then decides not to tell the truth and instead starts sobbing, filled with regret. In-ha comforts her. On the other hand, Jun-seok meets with the other three bullies at school. He tells them that Sunho tried to kill himself because of the bullying, but blames them for it, even though it was his idea. Jun-seok pretends not to care about his friends but advises them not to tell the truth, reminding them that the detective can't force them to confess. After this, the students are interviewed by the detective. Gi-chan reveals that Sunho often defended those being bullied. He also mentions that Dong-hwae is nicknamed Ghost because she's quiet and always focused on her studies. Jun-seok then shares a story about how Sunho once got mad at him for teasing Young-chol. Sunho embarrassed Jun-seok in front of the class, but they didn't fight since Jun-seok later apologized. Meanwhile, Mr. Lee is stressed by calls from parents worried about their children's studies being affected. He soon attends a meeting with Jin-pyo about the situation. Jin-pyo tries to blame Mr. Lee, accusing him of pretending to mourn instead of taking responsibility. This angers Mr. Lee and he leaves the meeting making an excuse. Next, Detective Park visits Sunho's parents. He informs them that the police have concluded the investigation as a likely self-harming case. The students' interviews suggested that Sunho was stressed about his grades, which might have led to his unthinkable act. However, Moo-jin insists they believe Sunho was a victim of school violence. Detective Park argues that without evidence, they can't prove anything. In-ha asks if they check Sunho's call history, but Detective Park explains they can't do that without a warrant. In-ha becomes furious, accusing the detective of not conducting a thorough investigation. Detective Park responds that there's nothing more he can do and leaves them with Sunho's belongings from the crime scene. Moments after the detective leaves, In-ha follows him and points out that the loss of Sunho's phone and the sudden malfunction of the security cameras can't be mere coincidences. Detective Park dismisses her concerns, saying such things often happen during investigations and aren't significant. In-ha, enraged by this, vows to find evidence that the crime scene was tampered with, no matter how long it takes. On her way home, she is disturbed by hearing some women gossiping about them, but Moo-jin stops her from reacting. As In-ha unpacks Sunho's belongings, including his shoes, she is overcome with sadness and starts sobbing. Later in Sunho's room, In-ha recalls that he had taken a diary with him the last time he went to school, but now it's missing. Determined to find it, they head to the school to check Sunho's locker. However, things take a turn when they discover that Suho has gotten into a fight with her friend, Jong-mi, who has called her mother. Jong-mi's mom demands that Suho apologize for hurting her daughter. Moo-jin also tells Suho to apologize, but she remains stubborn. Instead, Suho asks Jong-mi's mom to apologize for making false comments about her family, which upsets Suho. Hearing this, In-ha steps in to support Suho and suggests they talk privately. She tells Jong-mi's mom that her careless remarks during such a difficult time might have caused Suho emotional harm, potentially damaging her trust in adults forever. She tells Jong-mi's mom that she should be ashamed of herself. Outside, In-ha advises Jong-mi to support her friends during tough times, which makes Jong-mi regret her actions, and she apologizes. Meanwhile, Moo-jin advises Suho to ignore hurtful comments from others and to learn to forgive. He explains that sometimes losing can be a form of winning, but Suho responds that losing is just losing and criticizes Moo-jin for always teaching forgiveness, even when it's not their fault, saying that this attitude is why Sunho is also losing his life. As they return to the bakery, Moo-jin encounters Eunju on the way, who wants to talk to Inha. Moojin tells her that Inha is at the school, unaware that Eunju was actually at the school the night Sunho fell from the rooftop. That day, this incident had resurfaced as a nightmare for her. After waking from the bad dream, Eunju immediately checks her coat and finds a button from Sunho's blazer. Panicked, she tries to flush it down the toilet, but is startled by the sudden appearance of her husband, Jin Pyo. He notices her distressed state and sees the button, which hasn't been flushed away yet. Later, Eunju feels uneasy as Jin Pyo starts to suspect something. Meanwhile, Inha goes to the school to check Sunho's locker. On her way, she runs into Sunho's friends and mentions that she wants to ask them some questions later. Mr. Lee helps her access Sunho's locker, but she only finds a family picture inside. No sign of his phone. Inha then asks Mr. Lee if she can speak with Sunho's friends, and he agrees. When she meets them, she asks if they noticed anything unusual about Sunho, but none of them reveal anything. Jun Seok simply says he hasn't been close to Sunho lately and starts acting sad, even breaking down in tears. Their conversation is soon interrupted by Mr. Bae, who expresses concern about the already disrupted school environment due to Sunho's incident. He instructs Inha not to further distract the students. As Inha leaves, she meets Mr. Shin and asks to go to the roof where Sunho fell. Seeing the sight of the incident makes her emotional, and she can't hold back her tears. Meanwhile, Moojin gets hold of Sunho's call history and learns that his phone was turned off just before the incident was reported. He takes this information to Detective Park, but the detective still doesn't see it as significant evidence. However, he promises to review the security camera footage around the school. Later, Moojin remembers that Sunho tried calling him multiple times on the day of the incident, but he was too busy at school to answer. He wonders if things might have been different if he had picked up the call. In the next scene, Dong-hui meets her brother Dong-soo while heading home. Dong-soo is Moojin's student and lives alone with his sister. Dong-hui mentions that she doesn't believe Sunho would ever commit this type of act, even though it looks that way. Sensing that Dong-hui might know something, Dong-soo advises her not to talk about the incident with anyone to avoid trouble. Meanwhile, Suho tracks Sunho's transit card and discovers that he bought flowers on the day of the incident. She visits the florist to learn more. The florist confirms that Sunho purchased flowers earlier that day, but later saw him looking disappointed. He noticed that Sunho didn't get the chance to give the flowers to whoever he intended. Later at the hospital, Suho shares this discovery with her dad. Following this, Inha calls Mr. Lee to inquire about a phone number from Sunho's call history. Mr. Lee reveals that the number belongs to a student named Da Hui, who has been on leave for a few days due to illness. Inha wants to contact her, but Mr. Lee insists on getting permission from Da Hui's parents first. Shortly after, Eunju visits Sunho at the hospital when no one else is around. She thinks about turning off his ventilator to end his life, but ultimately changes her mind. While she's there, Inha arrives, and Eunju, looking panicked, offers her condolences. Inha asks Eunju to convince her husband to allow them to interview other students. She also mentions the missing diary and phone, hinting that someone else might be involved in the incident. Back in her car, Eunju makes a call to someone, asking about the missing diary and phone, but the person denies having them, which unsettles her even more. That night, unable to sleep, Inha looks through old photos of Sunho, thinking about past memories. Suddenly, she receives a shocking video from an unknown number. The video shows Gi-chan and Young-chol brutally beating Sunho, while Sung-jae records it, and Jun-seok watches silently. Inha screams in terror, waking Moojin, who is equally shocked after seeing the video. The next morning, Inha goes to Young-cheol's house to confront him. There she meets Suk-hui, who pretends she doesn't know about the bullying video. It turns out that Suk-hui had met Gi-chan's mom, Ji-hee, and Sung-jae's mom, Kyung-sun, the night before. Suk-hui wanted to apologize to Inha and tell her the truth, but Ji-haya and Kyung-sun convinced her to stay silent and protect their children instead. Inha quickly realizes that Suk-hui is lying and scolds her for hiding the truth. She then calls Young-cheol outside and confronts him about bullying Sunho. Suk-hui tries to defend him, but Inha, furious, slaps him. Suk-hui dismisses the incident as just boys playing rough games, further angering Inha, who then storms out. At home, Inha notices that she left her phone behind and finds Suho in a bad mood, likely because she also saw the video on Inha's phone. Meanwhile, Jun-seok is stressed as his friends text each other, fearing they'll be caught soon. He confesses everything to his mom and also talks to his dad. Jin-pyo advises him to tell his teacher the truth, but insists that he should claim the bullying was just a game and that he didn't force the others to join in, even though Jun-seok was the mastermind behind the bullying. Afterward, Moojin visits Detective Park and shows him the bullying video. Detective Park still believes it could have been a reason for Sunho's potential act. He explains that without evidence of someone pushing Sunho from the roof, the case will be handled by the Juvenile Affairs Division rather than the Criminal Division. On his way home, Moojin, frustrated, recalls how he once neglected spending time with Sunho because of work. Overwhelmed with guilt and anger, he gets into a fight with the driver after being wronged and decides he's done letting people mistreat him. Back at home, In-ha is still in shock and refuses to talk to anyone. Meanwhile, Gi-chan and Sung-jae's parents decide to protect their children from any blame instead of apologizing. At Jun-seok's house, Jin-pyo tells Eun-ju to apologize and reveal the truth to Sunho's parents. Eun-ju is confused and scared by Jin-pyo's harsh tone, but understands he's referring to the bullying incident. At school, Suho is filled with anger when she sees the bullies. Dong-hwe approaches her, concerned about Sunho's condition. Suho is touched by Dong-hwe's sincerity. Suho's parents meet with the school principal, who assures them that the school violence committee will investigate. However, they are doubtful and ask Mr. Lee for help in uncovering the truth. Mr. Bae assigns Mr. Shin to oversee the case, but still believes Sunho's death was a self-harm act. Later, In-ha receives a call that Suho left school early and her phone is turned off. Anxious, In-ha searches for Suho but encounters Eun-ju, who takes her back home and reveals that Jun-seok was a silent observer during the bullying. Eun-ju says that Jun-seok now regrets his actions. In-ha is upset with Jun-seok, but appreciates Eun-ju for being honest and thanks her. Meanwhile, Jun-seok confesses to Mr. Lee, who praises him, boosting Jun-seok's confidence. In a meeting with the other bullies' parents, Ji-hai reveals that Jun-seok was the leader of the group. Despite this, they decide not to blame him due to his influential connections. Elsewhere, Suho buys a bouquet of flowers similar to the ones Sunho bought and visits Dahue's home. She meets Dahue's mom, Kyung-suk, and gives her the flowers for Dahue. Kyung-suk rudely throws the flowers in the trash and goes inside. Furious, Suho throws a stone through their window and runs away. Night falls and Suho still hasn't come home, making her parents even more worried. Soon, the florist calls In-ha using Suho's phone and says Suho is using the shop's toilet. In-ha rushes to find her. Suho tells In-ha about the upsetting events from earlier. In-ha comforts her and encourages her to stay strong for her brother. The next day, Sunho's classmates are interviewed about the bullying incident. None of them admit to any bullying or want to talk about Sunho's case. Meanwhile, Detective Park shows Sunho's parents the road camera footage from the night of the incident. Sunho is seen entering the school gate, but the footage doesn't cover the back gate, so no further evidence is available. Detective Park explains that more evidence is needed to prove it wasn't a self-harm act. In-ha raises concerns about Sunho's missing phone and his attempt to contact Dahue, but the detective says he can't help further. Dahue is worried about her mom being interviewed by the school. When Kyung-suk returns, she assures Dahue that she didn't reveal any secrets. Moojin then confronts In-ha, blaming them for not knowing about Sunho's problems. In-ha insists that Sunho didn't commit the unthinkable, and she will find out who is responsible, even if she has to do it alone. Moojin meets with Mr. Shin to confirm that the security cameras were malfunctioning on the night of the incident. Mr. Shin confirms this, but says they are now fixed. At school, Gi-chan's dad, Sang-woo, arrives drunk and starts a fight with teacher Mr. Lee, blaming him for the trouble caused to Gi-chan due to the bullying. Mr. Bae steps in to calm things down. Later, in a meeting with Jin-pyo, Mr. Bae says the investigation shows the bullying was just a one-time event. Mr. Lee disagrees, believing Sunho may have been bullied regularly outside of school. Jin-pyo, however, is more concerned with the school's reputation and tells them to put measures in place to prevent more bullying. Next, Ji-hee and Kyung-sun visit In-ha at the bakery and complain that their kids are being embarrassed by the investigation. Kyung-sun even tries to blame Sunho for the bullying, calling it mutual assault. In-ha is infuriated by their selfishness and tells them to leave. After they leave, In-ha tells Moojin that she feels she has been a terrible mother to Sunho. Moojin comforts her, reminding her that she has always been a good and caring mother. At school, Suho tries to provoke the bullies by kicking them, hoping to make them look like habitual offenders. However, her plan fails as they quickly realize what she's trying to do. Later, Yong-cheol meets with Jun-seok and asks if he saw Sunho the night of the incident. Jun-seok then takes him to his home, where Yong-cheol says he overheard Sunho asking Jun-seok to meet at a place called La Puta that night. Jun-seok denies meeting Sunho and gives Yong-cheol a vape device to win his loyalty, while Eun-ju overhears the conversation. Later, Mr. Lee tells In-ha that Dahue's mom mentioned Dahue is uncomfortable talking about Sunho but didn't explain why. In-ha is curious about Kyung-suk's rude behavior, but Mr. Lee thinks it might not be related to Sun-ho. Meanwhile, Yoonju wakes up from a nightmare where Sun-ho regains consciousness, making her even more anxious. On the other hand, Soo-ho finally agrees to visit her brother in the hospital for the first time. The doctor tells Sun-ho's parents that he needs to be moved to a nursing home or affiliated hospital soon for proper care. The next day, the bullies and their parents are called to the school to be interviewed by Detective Kang. Sung-jae is the first to be questioned. He says the bullying only happened once, and it was just a game that went too far. Next is Gi-chan. At first, he's reluctant, but he admits that the bullying game was actually Jun-seok's idea, who also assigned them roles. Detective Park is surprised, but Gi-chan's lawyer stops further questions. Young Cheol is interviewed next. He denies what Gi-chan said about Jun-seok, and, after leaving, gives Jun-seok a thumbs up to show his loyalty. Finally, Jun-seok is interviewed. He lies, saying he was just a silent observer and not a leader in the game. After the interviews, Sun-ho's parents want to know the results, but Detective Kang keeps it secret until it's reviewed. Back at home, In-ha notices that Sun-ho's shoelaces are tied properly, even though she remembers Sun-ho never tied his shoelaces. He once told her it was easier to take off his shoes without tying them. In-ha takes this evidence to Detective Park to check for fingerprints. However, Detective Park says fingerprints are hard to get from shoes. Even if they find a partial print, they don't have other kids' prints to compare. In-ha leaves feeling disappointed, but Detective Park orders Detective Kim to get security footage of Sun-ho's route to school the night of the incident. Outside, a curious journalist, Choi Ji-kyung, offers to help In-ha and tries to get details about her son's case, but In-ha doesn't want to share any information with him. Meanwhile, Moo-jin meets Mr. Shin to ask about the shoelaces. Mr. Shin says he didn't touch the evidence and that the shoelaces were already tied when he found them. As Moo-jin leaves, he talks to a pancake seller who regularly visits the school. The seller says he was asleep during the night of the incident, but noticed a car parked outside the school's back gate. At school, Mr. Bae updates the director about the recent interviews. Jin-pyo hints at promoting Mr. Bae to principal and tells him to start an anti-bullying campaign at the school. In the school hallway, Mr. Lee meets Dong-hui, who seems like she wants to share something about Sun-ho. However, Dong-hui's brother Dong-soo had earlier warned her to stay silent to avoid getting into trouble, as he isn't strong enough to protect her. So Dong-hui doesn't reveal anything to Mr. Lee and doesn't have any evidence to share. Later, Soo-ho sees Jun-seok waiting outside Da-hoi's home and trying to call her, but he tries to hide it. Soo-ho feels that he's hiding something, especially since Da-hoi is avoiding him. She then vows to take revenge on Jun-seok for bullying her brother. Back at home, Soo-ho feels sad for her brother, feeling betrayed by his best friend. Meanwhile, Ji-hye confronts Suk-hue and Kyung-soon for not telling the truth about Jun-seok during the interview. This weakens Gi-chan's position, and his friends abandon him to support Jun-seok instead, feeling betrayed. When Suk-hue returns home, she asks Young-cheol why he didn't tell the truth. Young-cheol replies that friends don't betray each other. Following this, Suk-hue goes to meet In-ha. She apologizes to In-ha for defending Young-cheol, even though In-ha supported her after Young-cheol's dad passed away. Suk-hue feels truly embarrassed and asks for forgiveness. On the other hand, Jun-seok is upset when his mom asks if he told the truth about not bullying Sun-ho on purpose. Jin-pyo arrives home soon and notices the tension. He tells Yoonju that In-ha is more determined than expected, as she wants Sun-ho's shoes to be checked for fingerprints. Yoonju feels relieved when she hears that fabric doesn't hold fingerprints. In a flashback, we see that Eunju had dropped Jun-seok at school one night because he said he needed to pick up something important. Instead of going home, Eunju followed her son and saw Sun-ho fall from the roof. Instead of calling for help right away, Yoonju went to the roof and found Jun-seok crying and saying it was an accident. She sent Jun-seok to her car and then took off Sun-ho's shoes, tied the laces, and placed them on the roof to make it look like a self-harm act. In the present, Yoonju meets In-ha at the bakery and offers to let Sun-ho stay at her dad's hospital until he recovers. In-ha is unsure at first, but eventually agrees to Yoonju's offer. The next day, Sun-ho's parents receive the results of the investigation and are disappointed. The bullies only get 3 days of community service and 4 hours of special education. Meanwhile, Jin-pyo has a meal with his staff, praising them for handling the situation, although Mr. Lee doesn't look very happy. With no other options, Soo-ho writes an online petition to get support and help for her family. While at the hospital, In-ha is shocked to see Sun-ho move his finger. They immediately call the doctor, who says that Sun-ho might not recover further due to brain damage. unless there's a miracle. After that, In-ha tells Moo-jin she wants a retrial of the bullying case. Moo-jin disagrees with her. In-ha thinks he is too kind, but believes the bullies should be properly punished to prevent them from repeating their actions. Meanwhile, Jin-pyo confronts Yoon-ju after noticing that Jun-seok angrily left home after a fight. Yoon-ju criticizes Jin-pyo for not supporting her and Jun-seok, but Jin-pyo believes he is helping Jun-seok grow stronger. Outside, Jun-seok wanders around, thinking about his last conversation with Sun-ho. He had told Sun-ho that he was playing with Dahoi's feelings just because she was obsessed with him. Sun-ho punched Jun-seok for his behavior and asked if he had hurt Dahoy in any other way. Jun-seok, angry, admitted that he had. Soon Moo-jin sees Jun-seok wandering and offers him a ride home. He advises Jun-seok that everyone makes mistakes, but it's important to learn from them. Moo-jin also suggests that Jun-seok should visit Sun-ho in the hospital. When Moo-jin drops Jun-seok off, Yoon-ju is relieved to find him, as she has been searching for him. Jun-seok tells Yoon-ju that he wants to confess his actions to Moo-jin, hoping he will understand. But Yoon-ju tells him to keep quiet and pretend that nothing happened the night of the incident, and that they went home instead of going to school. Back at home, Moo-jin finds Suho's online petition and reads it. Suho describes her love for her brother and asks for support against the wealthy people trying to cover up the incident as an unthinkable act. Suho wakes up soon after. Moo-jin praises her and expresses concern that she might face trouble at school. But Suho says it's okay not to be okay sometimes. The next day at school, Mr. Bae is angry when he sees the online petition damaging the school's reputation. He tells Mr. Lee to get it removed, but Mr. Lee explains that once a petition is posted, it cannot be taken down. This frustrates Mr. Bae, who then orders Mr. Lee to arrange a meeting with Suho's parents. At the bakery, Kyung-sun visits In-ha and tries to offer her money to settle the issue. In-ha refuses the money and tells Kyung-sun to leave. Ji-hee also arrives, sees the confrontation, and gets angry at Kyung-sun for attempting to solve the matter alone. She starts attacking Kyung-sun, and In-ha throws cakes at both of them to scare them away. At school, students get excited about the petition and start coming up with theories about the incident, which disturbs Jun-seok. In the principal's office, Suho's parents meet with Mr. Bae, who says the petition is distracting students from their studies. Moo-jin agrees but says he's sorry that the kids are caught up in adult problems. Yoon-ju also learns about the petition from Kyung-sun, but pretends not to pay any attention to it. At the police station, journalist Ji Gyung tries to get more information about Sun-ho's case, but is told by Detective Park to stay away from it. Meanwhile, Sang-woo and Sung-jae's lawyer, Pil-jun, meet with Moo-jin and threaten him while offering settlement money. Moo-jin refuses and walks away. Soon after, Moo-jin gets a call from Dong-soo, who is in trouble for fighting with his employer over unpaid wages. Moo-jin scolds Dong-soo, but Dong-soo snaps back, saying he doesn't need Moo-jin's help or money for school. Moo-jin gets angry and slaps Dong-soo for mentioning how Sun-ho was neglected. Elsewhere, Yoon-ju visits the hospital and considers turning off Sun-ho's oxygen, but decides against it. She then meets In-ha, who feels regret about asking for a retrial. During their conversation, Eun-ju accidentally mentions Sun-ho's shoes. In-ha is surprised because she doesn't remember telling Eun-ju about the shoes. After Eun-ju leaves, In-ha calls Jun-ha to ask if she mentioned the shoes when they last met at the bakery. Jun-ha confirms she did not. After visiting the hospital, Eun-ju surprisingly meets Mr. Shin at an isolated place. It is revealed that Mr. Shin saw Yoon-ju and Jun-seok at the crime scene on the night of the incident. Yoon-ju had told him that Sun-ho's death was a self-harm and offered him money to keep it a secret, fearing that the police wouldn't believe her. Now Mr. Shin realizes that Eun-ju lied to cover up Jun-seok's crime. Yoon-ju denies it and accuses Mr. Shin of having Sun-ho's phone and diary and of sending the bullying video to In-ha to blackmail Yoon-ju. Mr. Shin doesn't admit anything but is actually hiding Sun-ho's phone. Mr. Shin warns Yoon-ju that Sun-ho's parents are getting closer to discovering the truth. They both agree to keep their secret. After Eun-ju leaves, Mr. Shin notices someone secretly watching him. Eun-ju then calls In-ha and explains that she learned about the shoes from her husband, not from Moo-jin. This clears up In-ha's doubts about Yoon-ju. Later, In-ha's mother visits the hospital after hearing about Sun-ho from Jun-ha. She starts crying and blames In-ha for not taking better care of Sun-ho. In-ha, already stressed, scolds her mother, who feels embarrassed and leaves. At home, Yoon-ju asks Jin-pyo about Suho's petition. Jin-pyo dismisses it, saying they don't need to worry about people beneath them. Meanwhile, Suho meets Gi-chan, who says that Jun-seok and Sun-ho's friendship fell apart after Sun-ho defended Dong-hwa from bullying. Suho, disgusted by Gi-chan, kicks him and walks away. On the other side, Moo-jin goes to Dong-soo's home and learns from Dong Hui that their parents have abandoned them. Mu-jin then angrily confronts Dong-su's former employer, who falsely accused Dong-su of stealing and hasn't paid him. Dong-su, seeing Mu-jin stand up for him, becomes emotional. When In-ha returns home, she notices Mu-jin looking stressed and encourages him to talk about his problems. Mu-jin feels like he's been pretending to be a good person while failing in real life. In-ha reassures him that he has a good heart and shares her own regret about being rude to her mother. That night, Mu-jin visits Dong-su, bringing him food and returning the money he recovered from Dong-su's former employer. Dong-su feels pitied, but Mu-jin explains that the world would be harsh if people stopped showing compassion. Dong-su mentions that Dong Hui knows something about Sun-ho's case. Meanwhile, In-ha dreams that Jun Seok is hurting himself, but wakes up relieved to find him safe. Earlier, In-ha visited Yong Cheol to confirm if Jun Seok was involved in the bullying. Yong Cheol remains loyal to Jun Seok, saying Gi-chan is lying. Later, Jun Seok tells his mother about In-ha visiting Yong Cheol. Jun Seok acts arrogantly, believing his parents can solve all his problems. At school, Mr. Bae praises Mr. Shin in front of the teachers for his actions during the incident. Afterward, Mr. Lee asks Mr. Shin about the old security cameras, which were replaced after the incident. Mr. Shin says the security company would have destroyed them. In class, Mr. Lee shares his email with students, offering them a way to contact him anonymously if they need help or face bullying. Soon, Ji-gyong approaches Mu-jin, trying to persuade him to share his story to gain support. Mu-jin wants to discuss it with his wife first. Mr. Bae warns Jin Pyo that Ji-gyong is persistently trying to get information for an article. Jin Pyo instructs to ignore Ji-gyong. That night, Dong Hui and Dong-su visit In-ha and Mu-jin at the bakery to reveal the truth. Dong Hui explains that she was planning to end her life the night of the incident because she felt deeply depressed and was being bullied. Sun-ho happened to pass by and stopped her. He gave her a book and a chocolate bar, telling her that if she was brave enough to end her life, she could accomplish anything. Dong-su is shocked by this revelation. Dong Hui also mentions that she felt like a burden to her brother, which upsets Dong-su even more. Mu-jin consoles Dong-su outside, advising him to support his sister instead of letting his emotions control him. In-ha shares her own experience of surviving with Jun-ha after their mother abandoned them, and advises Dong Hui to take care of Dong-su, who is motivated to work hard because of her. Dong Hui also reveals that Jun Seok bullied Sun-ho because Sun-ho was kind to her, and that Jun Seok is manipulative and likes to control others while appearing innocent. Mu-jin drops Dong Hui and Dong-su back at home, and they part on good terms. Meanwhile, Eun-ju finds her husband listening to a mysterious voice recorder secretly given to him by Mr. Shin. She is surprised when Jin Pyo becomes frustrated and throws the voice recorder away in anger. Jun Seok returns home after visiting Sun-ho at the hospital. Eun-ju tries to talk to him, but Jun Seok feels suffocated. Believing his mother does not think that Sun-ho's death was an accident, he rudely sends his mother away. Outside, Jin Pyo, who is preparing to leave for an urgent matter, notices Eun-ju's distress, but does not ask her about it. After Jin Pyo leaves, Eun-ju finds the voice recorder on the floor and begins to listen to it. However, In-ha arrives, wanting to talk to Jun Seok about his role as the leader of the bullies. In-ha accuses Eun-ju of pretending to be friendly while hiding the truth. Yoon-ju denies it, but In-ha no longer trusts her and leaves. Yoon-ju wonders how In-ha knows the truth. Meanwhile, Jin Pyo meets Mr. Shin, who threatens to reveal evidence incriminating Jun Seok. Jin Pyo counters by showing that he has kidnapped Mr. Shin's son, Mr. Ice, who is a drug addict and gambler. Jin Pyo warns Mr. Shin that his henchman will kill Mr. Ice if he tries to reveal anything. At home, Jin Pyo teaches his son to view themselves as superior to others because of their upper-class status and to think of others as inferior. The next day, Mu-jin updates Detective Park on the case, who agrees that there's more to uncover. Some police officers visit In-ha at her bakery because the bullies' mothers complain that In-ha is interrogating their children. Jun-ha then goes to confront the mothers, humiliating Kyung-soon. At school, Mr. Lee accuses Jun Seok of being the ringleader of the bullies, but doesn't mention Dong Hui as a witness. Mr. Bae furiously debates but is cooled down by Mr. Kang-hoon. Later, In-ha visits the school, where Mr. Shin, the guard, gives her a cactus for Sun-ho, saying it represents strength and resilience. In-ha places the cactus in Sun-ho's room at home. Su-ho and Dong Hui, now friends, meet with Ji-gyung and agree to share a detailed account of the incident for publication. Jin Pyo rushes home to retrieve the voice recorder, but finds that Eun-ju has already discovered it. The recorder contains a conversation between Jun Seok and Sun-ho from the night of the incident. Eun-ju is upset that Jin Pyo knew the truth, but didn't tell her. Jinpyo blames Eunju for not seeking his help and tells her that the matter is under control and Mr. Shin won't be able to blackmail them anymore. Meanwhile, Sunho's parents review security footage and see Eunju's car near the school's back gate on the night of the incident. In-ha's suspicions are confirmed, but Moojin believes they need more evidence before making any conclusions. He revisits the pancake seller, who confirms seeing the same car. Next, In-ha asks Sukhui to investigate Yong Cheol about Sunho's whereabouts that night. Sukhui approaches Yong Cheol, but he lies and refuses to reveal the truth. A flashback reveals that the voice recording was made by Sunho when he confronted Junseok about sexually assaulting Da-hui. Junseok denied the assault, but admitted to manipulating Da-hui's feelings. Sunho, not believing Junseok's denial, ended up in a physical fight with him, which led to Sunho's fall from the roof. Meanwhile, Junha and Mr. Lee meet Da-hui's parents, who refuse to discuss why they dislike Sunho. Later, while drinking, Junha advises Mr. Lee to focus on teaching for the sake of the students, not for personal gain. The next day, Moojin takes some time off from work to cook for his family, and In-ha is pleasantly surprised by his supportive gesture. However, she doesn't realize that the food was actually sent by her mom. Elsewhere, Ji-gyong contacts Mr. Bae about Junseok being the ringleader of the bullies. Mr. Bae becomes furious, denies the allegations, and threatens legal action if the information is published. On the other hand, Moojin presents the video evidence of Eunju's car near the school to Detective Kim. Detective Kim argues that it's not enough proof of a crime. Moojin scolds the detectives for their previous lack of thorough investigation and threatens to go to the media if they don't cooperate. Detective Park agrees to interview Eunju and check the security cameras around her house, although the dash cam footage may no longer be available. Soon after, Ji-gyong meets with Moojin to discuss publishing an article based on the information collected from Suho. Moojin finally agrees to let him write the article, despite the risks. While this is happening, In-ha visits Eunju to pay for Sunho's care as she is moving him to another hospital. The staff has refused her payment, and In-ha, having lost trust in Eunju, warns her that Junseok will face consequences for his mother's mistakes. After In-ha leaves, Jinpyo advises Eunju to be cautious, as detectives may visit soon. Detectives Park and Kim arrive and question Eunju about her presence near the school that night. Eunju lies, saying she took that route to avoid traffic. At school, Dong-hui is called by Mr. Bai, who scolds her, accusing her of lying to Sunho's parents and causing chaos. Mr. Lee soon arrives and defends Dong-hui, asserting that she might be the only one telling the truth, which should be encouraged. Meanwhile, Mr. Shin meets Moojin at a bar while being watched by Jin Pyo's hitman to ensure he doesn't reveal the truth. Moojin questions Mr. Shin, accusing him of possibly removing the security footage from the crime scene and sending the bullying video using Sunho's phone. In contrast, Mr. Shin talks about his drug addict son, but doesn't reveal that he actually helped In-ha get money to support his son. He denies all accusations and compares Moojin to a cactus, enduring harsh conditions before leaving. Later, In-ha tries to talk to Junseok after his academy, asking him to tell the truth. Junseok recalls the lies his parents told him and refuses to reveal the truth. Soon after, Eunju arrives, looking for Junseok, and insults In-ha for harassing her son. On the way back, Eunju takes the back road towards home, as she had lied to the detectives about using that route to avoid raising any suspicion. Upon arriving home, Eunju behaves strangely with her son, telling him to pretend that their lies are true. Jinpyo tells her to get herself together, only caring about himself and his business. Meanwhile, Eunju tells Jinpyo that she wouldn't bother him even if she were in hell. Jinpyo then tries to motivate his son, telling him that he believes Junseok accidentally hurt Sunho and promises to protect him from any trouble. Following this, In-ha buys a new pair of shoes for Sunho, as he never asked her to buy him shoes. While this is happening, Dong-hui and Suho secretly follow Da-hui when she leaves her home at night. Suho presses Da-hui to reveal whatever she is hiding. When Suho mentions Junseok, Da-hui undergoes another panic attack and starts screaming. Da-hui's mom, Kyung-suk, rushes to help and slaps Suho for hurting Da-hui. Meanwhile, Suho's family is worried due to her absence and can't contact her. In-ha then decides to search for Suho outside and eventually finds her with her brother at the hospital. Suho tells In-ha all that happened recently. In-ha is also curious to find the reason behind the weird behavior of Da-hui's family and decides to talk to them later. The next day begins with a new surprise as Ji-gyong's article is finally published. After the news spreads like wildfire, Suho's petition also gains more attention. Director Jin Pyo also has a meeting with the principals of the school. He tells the principals not to believe in the credibility of Ji Gyung, as he was once charged with forcing assault, although the case was later dismissed. On the other hand, Jun Seok becomes the center of gossip at school, but he still tries to act innocent in front of his class. Gi-chan tries to embarrass Jun Seok in front of the class, but Jun Seok outsmarts Gi-chan instead and makes him look stupid and like a bully. Earlier that morning, Jin Pyo instructed Jun Seok to be confident and stay silent unless necessary. Yoon-ju wanted to let Jun Seok stay at home, but Jin Pyo disagreed and Jun Seok sided with him. Next, Mr. Bai instructs arranging a meeting with the parents of the kids to take them into confidence and make Ji-gyung look bad. Mr. Lee also learns that Ji-gyung and the director have been in conflict for a long time. On the other hand, the chief of police, who has power connections with Jin Pyo, warns Detective Park from investigating Sun-ho's case and threatens the detective's job. In the meantime, In-ha feels happy but sorry at the same time that the other kids have to suffer because of the article. Jun-ha scrolls through the article online and finds many insulting comments about the reporter due to Jin Pyo's propaganda. She tries to hide it from In-ha but fails. In-ha is heartbroken to learn that the opposite of their expectations is happening. Her husband supports her in this difficult time and tells her not to lose hope as they are getting closer to the culprits every day. Jin Pyo, on the other hand, meets Ji Gyung and tries to frame him for blackmailing him for money by secretly recording their conversation. But Ji Gyung is smart and has also recorded the part when Jin Pyo reveals his intentions to frame him. Ji Gyung warns Jin Pyo that he will take revenge for their personal conflict, no matter how Jin Pyo tries to avoid it. In the next scene, Sun-ho's parents meet with Da-hue's mom, Kyung-suk. Kyung-suk finally reveals the reason behind her rudeness by claiming that Sun-ho is not a victim, but the one who assaulted Da-hue. Sun-ho's parents cannot believe her, but Kyung-suk tells them that Da-hue herself has claimed that Sun-ho assaulted her. She further blames that Sun-ho couldn't live with the guilt of assaulting Da-hue and committed the unthinkable. Kyung-suk didn't want to reveal this truth earlier, but due to repeated pressure from Sun-ho's parents, she is forced to tell them. She curses Sun-ho for his actions and believes that he is suffering rightly as punishment. Sun-ho's parents are beyond shocked upon hearing this and cannot believe that Sun-ho is capable of committing such an act. At the same time, Eun-ju meets Kyung-sun outside the kids' academy. Kyung-sun suggests suing the journalist, but Eun-ju says she can't interfere in those matters. Returning home with Jun Seok, Eun-ju questions him about Da-hue and mentions finding a lipstick in Jun Seok's drawer. Jun Seok avoids answering her and gets upset with Eun-ju for not trusting his words, so he decides to walk home alone. Upon reaching back home, Eun-ju learns that Sun-ho's parents visited Da-hue's parents and worries that they may uncover the truth about Jun Seok and report it to the police. However, Jin Pyo reassures her not to worry, insisting that the situation is different. When Jun Seok returns, Jin Pyo tells him to prepare to move abroad temporarily. Jun Seok agrees but insists on not going with his mom. Later that night, Eun-ju gets drunk from stress. She hides the lipstick in a pot and argues with Jin Pyo, blaming him for ruining Jun Seok and herself because of his selfishness. Jin Pyo threatens her not to even think about bringing him down with her, while Jun Seok watches from a window in fear. Meanwhile, Jun-ha contacts Mr. Lee and meets him. Jun-ha feels bad because of the comments on the article and the rumor that Sun-ho's parents are using the media to get settlement money. Mr. Lee regrets not being able to effectively stop the propaganda at school. They then have dinner with Su-ho and Dong-hui, where Dong-hui expresses her gratitude for Mr. Lee taking her side in front of Mr. Bae. Soon, Mr. Lee receives a call from Moo-jin requesting an urgent meeting. In-ha tries to stop Moo-jin, fearing he will reveal details about Da-hue's incident. But Moo-jin argues that they need to uncover the truth. In-ha breaks down at the thought of Da-hue's claim being true, but Moo-jin insists on investigating further. Meeting Mr. Lee, Moo-jin asks about the time after which Da-hue stopped coming to school. Mr. Lee promises to provide the exact date and mentions that Jin Pyo's powerful connections with the police led to Dong-hue's statement being leaked. At the police station, Detective Park learns that Detective Kang leaked the information through Detective Kim. Ji Ga-young is also present and taunts Detective Park to work harder to reveal the true facts of Sun-ho's incident. Later that night, Su-ho returns home and tells her mom that Sun-ho would never have tried to contact Da-hue without a good reason. She also mentions that she saw Jun Seok trying to meet Da-hue. On the other hand, Moo-jin meets up with Dong-soo, who reassures him not to worry about the comments on the article. Dong-soo also points out that Dong-hue has started to be more outspoken and confident since becoming friends with Su-ho. When Moo-jin returns home, In-ha apologizes for showing an embarrassing side of herself earlier. She now understands what it's like to be accused, but they agree to trust their son's character and continue their efforts to reveal the truth. The next morning, Moojin contacts Dahui's father to arrange a meeting. He inquires about the date of Dahui's assault and learns that it occurred on her birthday. Dahui's father is not pleased with the meeting and threatens to report Sunho's assault to the police, but Moojin remains determined to uncover the truth. On the same day, Junseok and his friends bully Gi-chan for embarrassing Junseok, leaving him isolated. Meanwhile, In-ha visits the florist to find out more about the day Sunho bought flowers for Dahui. The florist tells her that Sunho was excited when he bought the flowers but appeared very sad later that day. In-ha then heads to a library, recalling that Sunho went there on Dahui's birthday. She is relieved to learn from the librarian that Sunho spent the entire day reading a book and didn't meet anyone. On the other hand, Detective Park returns Yoonju's dash cam, explaining that he couldn't retrieve any substantial evidence from it. However, he is puzzled by a 35-minute gap in time between when Yoonju left the school and when she arrived home. Even though the school is only 10 minutes away, Yoonju quickly invents an excuse, saying she took a wrong turn because she was debating with Junseok. After the detectives leave, Yoonju calls Jinpyo in a panic, worried that they might have discovered the truth about Dahui. Jinpyo advises her not to act out of fear and assures her that he will handle the situation. Yoonju takes some calming medication and tries to call Junseok to check on him, but he ignores her calls. In class, Mr. Lee shows a video to raise awareness about bullying, but Junseok seems uninterested and starts studying. Later, Mr. Bae distributes a poster for a bullying awareness campaign. Mr. Lee and Ms. Ham criticize the poster for sending the wrong message, as it tells victims to endure abuse without defending themselves. They believe that the focus should be on encouraging bystanders to report bullying and assist those in need. However, Mr. Bae disagrees with their perspective. Later that day, Moojin visits the hospital and finds Sunho standing by the window, seemingly healed. Sunho expresses his desire to watch the sky, but Moojin realizes it's just a dream when he wakes up. He shares the dream with In-ha, and they both hope that it might come true someday. Following this, In-ha visits Kyung-suk to explain that Dahui might be lying because Sunho was at the library on Dahui's birthday. Sunho had asked his mom to bake a cake for his friend, but he returned it because he didn't get to meet Dahui. Kyung-suk, however, doesn't believe In-ha and refuses to let her talk to Dahui, thinking that In-ha is trying to conceal the truth. It is revealed that Dahui had agreed to go see a movie with Sunho on her birthday to provoke Junseok. However, she later ditched Sunho after Junseok invited her to his house. Dahui is currently being watched by one of Jinpyo's men. When Junseok returns home, Eunju warns him that detectives might visit to ask questions. Junseok, frustrated with his mother's attempts to fix things, tells her that she has ruined his life. He tells her that he used to envy Sunho because his family seemed so genuine and warm, whereas Junseok's parents were pretentious. This envy is what fueled his hatred for Sunho. When Sunho challenged their social hierarchy, a lesson Jinpyo had taught him, Junseok decided to punish Sunho for it. Later, Donghui reveals to In-ha that Sunho had feelings for Dahui, but Dahui was obsessed with Junseok. In response to his jealousy, Junseok began being nice to Dahui to provoke Sunho. Meanwhile, Ji-gyong visits Mr. Shin in an attempt to uncover more details, but Mr. Shin remains silent. As Ji-gyong is about to leave, he sees Mr. Shin rushing off due to an emergency and notices a mysterious car following him. Ji-gyong records the car's license plate number and asks Detective Park to look into it. It is later revealed that Mr. Shin's wife has passed away. Mr. Shin contacts Jinpyo, requesting that he stop the person following him until the funeral is over. However, Jinpyo is wary and wants to ensure that Mr. Shin does not reveal any truths. Jinpyo then meets Moojin, trying to manipulate him by showing a recording of Ji-gyong. Moojin, aware that Jinpyo is concealing the truth, insists that they will uncover the reality regardless of criticism, supported by his family. After that, Moojin meets Ji-gyong to confirm Jinpyo's claims. Ji-gyong explains that Jinpyo was a former classmate who was always manipulative. When Ji-gyong tried to expose Jinpyo's corruption, he was framed in a false forcing assault case. On the other hand, Junseok is missing from home, and Eunju searches for him. Junseok attempts to buy alcohol at a store where Dong-soo works. Dong-soo refuses to sell him alcohol due to his age. Junseok, distressed, asks Dong-soo to hit him, but Dong-soo tells him to go home. Later, Junha finds Junseok and tries to confront him, but Junseok flees. That night, Mr. Shin sneaks away from the funeral and calls Moojin, ready to reveal the truth. Just as Mr. Shin begins to speak, a truck fatally runs him over. Soon, Detective Park, who is waiting outside the funeral of Mr. Shin's wife in hopes of catching his criminal son, Mr. Ice, receives an alert from Mujin about Mr. Shin's situation. At the police station, Detective Park informs Mujin that Sun Ho's belongings were not found at Mr. Shin's place, as the police had already searched it after the accident. However, Detective Park suspects that Mr. Shin must have hidden the evidence somewhere safe, given his background as a former detective. In the security footage, Detective Park spots a man in a black car boldly stealing Mr. Shin's cell phone after the accident and decides to check the car's license plate. Ji-gyung arrives soon after and suspects Jin Pyo to be the main culprit. Detective Park advises him to keep quiet to avoid alerting Jin Pyo through someone overhearing their conversation. Meanwhile, Jin Pyo informs Eunju about Mr. Shin's death, but denies any involvement. He is made aware by his powerful connections with the police that Mr. Shin's phone is missing and questions Eunju about whether she had contacted him on his phone. While this is happening, Soo-ho and Dong-hui visit Mr. Shin's office to pay their respects. Soo-ho has respect for Mr. Shin because In-ha told him that Mr. Shin was a good man who wanted to reveal the truth in the end. On the other side, Jun-seok goes to school and learns about Mr. Shin's hit-and-run incident. The students are excited by the news and come up with their own theories about it. Mr. Bae instructs the teachers to help the students stay focused on their studies, as they may be distracted by recent events. Following this, Mujin attends Mr. Shin's funeral and then confronts Jin Pyo. He accuses Jin Pyo of being responsible for Mr. Shin's death and vows to send him to jail. Jin Pyo pretends nothing has happened and calls Mujin mentally unstable due to his obsession with Sun Ho's incident. This provokes Mujin, who punches Jin Pyo, calling him emotionless and inhumane. He warns Jin Pyo that he will seek revenge for his unforgivable acts. After that, Mujin happens to pass by Dong-soo. He acknowledges that he now understands why Dong-soo resorted to violence, but still believes that violence cannot be justified. Returning to the hospital, Mujin expresses his shame to In-ha about his recent actions. In-ha comforts him and encourages him to stay strong. She offers him her shoulder to lean on and promises to support him always. Meanwhile, the police have apprehended a man named Hung-gil, who was following Mr. Shin in his car. Hung-gil has a criminal history and previously worked as a bodyguard for Jin Pyo. Detective Park suspects that Hung-gil might be involved in doing dirty work for wealthy individuals. During questioning, Hung-gil claims he followed Mr. Shin because he wanted to meet him, but Detective Park believes Hung-gil is concealing darker secrets. Next, Detective Park receives Mr. Shin's call history and heads to question Jin Pyo and Eunju. It is revealed that Mr. Shin called Jin Pyo on the night of Sun Ho's incident before contacting emergency services and also reached out to Eunju multiple times. Jin Pyo fabricates a story that Mr. Shin only informed him of the incident, though Detective Park notes that Mr. Shin did not mention this call in his statement. Eunju claims that she called Mr. Shin to inquire about Sun Ho rather than speaking to In-ha. Detective Park observes Eunju's nervousness and senses that she knows something sinister about Jin Pyo. While at school, Soo-ho finds Jun-seok searching through Mr. Shin's office. She confronts him and demands the truth. Jun-seok pushes her aside, and Soo-ho expresses relief that Jun-seok didn't confess and remains evil till the end. This way, she won't have to consider forgiving him. In class, Dong-soo advises Gi-chan to seek help from Mr. Lee for dealing with bullying. Gi-chan is offended by Dong-soo's advice and dismisses it, saying he doesn't need advice from a ghost. Boldly, Dong-soo responds that she dislikes being called a ghost and feels much happier speaking her mind now. In the next scene, Soo-ho visits Da-hui's home to give her a letter of apology for pressuring her earlier about Sun Ho. In a twist, Detective Park captures footage of Eunju secretly handing money to Mr. Shin at a railway station. Meanwhile, Eunju is missing from home when Jin Pyo returns. She has left her phone behind, and Jin Pyo receives a call from Detective Park on her phone. Detective Park informs Jin Pyo about the footage and mentions that he will investigate if it is related to the hit-and-run incident, adding to Jin Pyo's frustration. Meanwhile, Eunju is deeply depressed and considers ending her life, but refrains from doing so because she cares for Jun-seok. Later, Eunju meets Detective Park for questioning. She explains that she gave the money to help Mr. Shin, but struggles to provide a convincing reason for the secrecy. Meanwhile, In-ha and Mujin comfort each other and stay strong. Mujin suddenly recalls Mr. Shin referring to himself as a cactus and rushes to Sun Ho's room. There, he flips the cactus pot Mr. Shin gifted them and discovers Sun Ho's phone hidden inside it. Sun Ho's parents turn on the phone and find a voice recording of the entire incident from that night. including Yunju's plea to Mr. Shin not to reveal the truth and her offer of money. With this evidence, Mu-jin takes it to Detective Park, who assures him they will question Yunju and Junseok. Mu-jin also informs Detective Park about what he knows regarding Dahui's incident. Soon after, In-ha tells Suho that they have finally found evidence. Meanwhile, as Junseok prepares to leave the country to study abroad, Detective Park arrives at their home. He instructs Junseok's parents not to go anywhere until the investigation of the new evidence is complete. Next, Yunju is questioned by the police first. She confesses to hiding Junseok's involvement in Sunho's incident. She explains that she was not in her right state of mind that night, which led her to cover up the incident instead of reporting it to the police. She further reveals that Mr. Shin blackmailed her into revealing the evidence, which is why she had to give him the money. After this, Junseok tells Detective Park that he mistakenly pushed Sunho from the roof, but denies being the ringleader of the bullies. He also claims that he did not assault Dahui. Following the interviews, Detective Park informs Sunho's parents that Junseok may not receive a severe punishment if they cannot provide more evidence to prove he assaulted Dahui. Later, Mu-jin provides Ji-gyung with the voice recording evidence to support another article. The next day, Jin-pyo is enraged upon seeing the article in the newspaper, as it could damage his reputation. Suho learns about Junseok's involvement after reading the article and is disheartened that Junseok has not yet been punished for his crimes. In-ha advises her to remain patient and avoid resorting to violence. Meanwhile, Jin-pyo continues to instruct his son to face school with confidence and not be disturbed by others' comments. At school, Junseok becomes the focus of gossip and humiliation, with students isolating him in a corner of the class. Mr. Lee offers Junseok a separate room to avoid the attention, but Junseok runs away. Meanwhile, Yunju visits In-ha to confess her mistakes and seek forgiveness. In-ha scolds Yunju, stating that she can never forgive her for being so selfish and only thinking about Junseok. In-ha believes that if Yunju had reported the incident to emergency services in time, Sunho would not be in such critical condition. Later, Detective Park reveals that Junseok's phone records show he did not meet Dahui on her birthday. Since Dahui's parents refused to involve their daughter in the investigation, no further evidence can be obtained. Detective Park suspects that Dahui may have been lying all along. Next, the other bullies are brought in for questioning. Gi-chan admits that they threatened to bully Dong-hoe to force Sunho to meet them before the assault. Yongcheol also discloses that he heard Sunho calling Junseok to meet at a place called Laputa on the night of the incident. It is then revealed that Sunho and Junseok used to spend time on the school's rooftop, which Sunho had named Laputa, referring to a mythical city in a fairy tale. Meanwhile, Jin-pyo convenes a meeting with the school administration. He explains that the school's reputation is suffering due to the recent events, and someone needs to take responsibility to restore their image. Principal Mr. Myung, feeling guilty for not fulfilling his responsibilities and acknowledging his age, volunteers to resign. Later at the hospital, Suho notices Sunho's fingers moving. She quickly alerts her parents, and they all attempt to communicate with Sunho to bring him back to consciousness. Moments later, Sunho opens his eyes. Sunho's family, friends, and teachers are extremely happy to witness his miraculous recovery after his severe injuries. A doctor examines Sunho's body functions, noting that he cannot move his toes yet. The doctor indicates that Sunho will need more time to recover before determining if there is any permanent damage. Upon learning of Sunho's recovery, Detective Park urges Mu-jin to obtain a statement from Sunho about whether Junseok deliberately pushed him off the roof. If not, the court may suspend Junseok's indictment. Mu-jin agrees to pursue this once Sunho is in better health. Later, Detective Park tracks down the black car used to steal Mr. Shin's phone. The car belongs to a wanted criminal, Gi Deok-cheol, who narrowly escapes capture by the detectives. The following night, Eunju demands a divorce from Jin-pyo and custody of Junseok. She is unwilling to raise Junseok to become like his father. Jin-pyo becomes enraged, stating that the court will likely deny her custody of Junseok given her involvement in the Sunho incident. The next day at school, Junseok faces further isolation from his friends and humiliation from the rest of the class, which drives him to run away. Mr. Lee uses this situation as a teaching moment, instructing his students not to be rude to their classmates and to support each other in times of crisis, emphasizing that this will help them become better people. Later on, Eunju is alerted about Junseok's escape and rushes outside to search for him. Meanwhile, Mr. Bai is directed by Jin-pyo to meet Sunho's parents and offer them money on behalf of the school to support Sunho's recovery. Mr. Bai delivers the money to Mu-jin, who sees through Jin-pyo's manipulative strategy and refuses the offer, insisting that Jin-pyo should apologize and confess his wrongdoings instead. Sunho's parents then meet Ji-gyung, who informs them that Jun Seok's indictment might soon be suspended by the court, as the law favors correction over punishment. Meanwhile, Sunho suffers from nightmares about falling off the school's roof. Soon after, Moojin finds Sunho has fallen out of bed and is distressed over his inability to move his legs. Moojin reassures Sunho that recovery is possible and that he will gradually improve. Later that night, Jinpyo receives a call from Gi Deok-cheol, who demands money in exchange for providing evidence that Jinpyo was involved in Mr. Shin's death. Meanwhile, Eunju, desperate and distressed, continues searching for Jun Seok. She tries to reach out to In-ha for help, but In-ha, showing no sympathy, advises Eunju to reveal the whole truth. In-ha believes that only by facing the truth can Eunju free herself from her lies. These words drive Eunju into a frenzy, leading to a confrontation with Jinpyo, where she accuses him of ruining her life and failing as a supportive husband. Meanwhile, Jun Seok attempts to steal alcohol again and is stopped by Dong-soo. Dong-soo offers him food and support, but Jun Seok, feeling overwhelmed, runs away. He then goes to the police station and admits to pushing Sunho off the roof deliberately, due to the fear that Sunho would expose his assault on Dahui. However, Sunho's parents soon informed Detective Park that the incident was an accident, revealing that Jun Seok's confession was a lie. Moments later, Jun Seok's parents arrive, and Jinpyo confronts him about his deceit. Jun Seok responds by calling Jinpyo a liar, resulting in Jinpyo slapping him. Jun Seok, enraged and distressed, runs away. At the same time, Dahui decides to come clean about the truth and calls In-ha's mother, confessing her lies as she can no longer bear the weight of her deceit. Following Jun Seok's escape, Mr. Lee and Moojin search for him, concerned that he might harm himself. Sunho informs Moojin about a rooftop that Jun Seok frequently visits. Moojin heads there and finds Jun Seok on the edge, considering the unthinkable act. Jun Seok remembers meeting Dahui after her birthday, where she accused him of her assault due to his absence in his room when she came to meet him at his house. It's revealed that Jinpyo had threatened Dahui, warning her to keep quiet or face severe consequences. Moojin arrives just in time to stop Jun Seok from jumping. He tells Jun Seok that Sunho has confirmed the fall was an accident and advises him that true forgiveness can only be achieved through repentance and making amends, not through this act. Meanwhile, Jinpyo meets with Deok-cheol to exchange money for evidence. However, Jinpyo discovers that the flash drive Deok-cheol gave him contains only wildlife footage, not the incriminating evidence he was expecting. At home, Eunju confronts Jinpyo about their son's situation, expressing frustration over his neglect and the fact that Moojin was the one who saved Jun Seok's life. Eunju criticizes Jinpyo for his indifference, while Jun Seok was deeply troubled. The next morning brings a hopeful development. Sunho is finally able to move his feet. His classmates are thrilled and decide to visit him. Gi-chan, feeling regret for his role in the bullying, visits Sunho. Overwhelmed by Sunho's kindness, who offers him ice cream, Gi-chan runs away in tears. In the following scene, Dahui's father visits Sunho's parents to apologize for previously blaming them. As the situation begins to stabilize, Dahui's case is reported to the police, and her statement is recorded. It is revealed that on Dahui's birthday, Jun Seok called her to his home to meet her. While Dahui was waiting for Jun Seok, applying the lipstick later found by Eunju, Jinpyo arrived home drunk and assaulted Dahui, as no one else was present to intervene. Following the final turn of events, Detective Park receives a call from Deok-cheol, who plans to frame Jinpyo by sending incriminating evidence of Jinpyo's involvement in Mr. Shin's murder. As a result, Jinpyo is arrested. Despite Jinpyo's confidence that the evidence may not be sufficient for a conviction, he is unaware that Eunju had previously accessed one of his safes. Inside, she found comprehensive evidence of Jinpyo's corruption, his role in Mr. Shin's murder, and the assault on Dahui. Eunju handed this crucial evidence to the police, ensuring Jinpyo's conviction. Eunju then informs In-ha of her decision to leave the city and enroll Jun Seok in a smaller school. She also returns Sunho's diary, which she discovered in Jinpyo's safe. It turns out that the diary is actually Sunho's poetry journal, filled with his favorite poems. Before leaving the city, Jun Seok expresses his gratitude to Dong-soo for his support. Dong-soo offers his contact information, promising to help if needed. Eunju visits Jinpyo in prison, telling him that he deserves to remain there, and remarks on how well the prison clothing suits him. In a touching final meeting, Jun Seok visits Sunho one last time. Sunho forgives Jun Seok and gives him his poetry book, urging him to read the last page. The poem is a message about leadership, positivity, following the right path, and bringing hope and light to those around. The story concludes on a hopeful note, with the characters returning to their normal lives, having learned valuable lessons from their traumatic experiences.